I know I'm exhausted. Well, welcome back, parents and family and friends. This is always a really cool kind of event for us to be able to, get together again and to celebrate the hard work that your students have been, working at over the last 4 weeks. As I promised from the very beginning, this is not going to be something that's easy. Hopefully, this was a good challenge for everybody, though, and that they got something that they'll remember. And for those of you that are thinking about pursuing education in this field, and definitely for those of you that are thinking of maybe coming to DigiPen, we just wanted to make sure that you get a real taste of it and understand the level of commitment and the discipline and all the kinds of stuff that I talked to you on day one. This is real, right? And it's not just because we're wanting to be tough or we have some cruel streak in front of us. The reality is the industry is really tough, right? And you got to be ready for it, and you got to be able to pivot and adapt and all of that. If you're one of those individuals, this industry is fantastic, right? The opportunities that are out there are really great, and again, I really hope that you feel that you benefited from the experience. I was talking to a couple of parents. I didn't see any physical combat happen, so that's good. Nobody died. Nobody got. You guys are still here, and you're still smiling. So, for today, what we typically do is at the beginning, we actually want to do just a bit of an explanation about our programs here, the degree programs, and our admissions process. So, in a moment, I'm just going to have Emily come up here, just spend a few minutes to talk about that. After that, I'll invite. We had a couple of students that wanted to do a computer engineering track. There wasn't enough students for us to run the whole thing, so we had them join with the computer science students, with the one exception that they, instead of doing a video game, they actually worked on sort of a robotics type of project. And so I want to give them a quick opportunity as well to kind of share with you what they did, and then they're going to go off to another room to show their parents a little bit more about the robots, while the rest of you hear from the game teams. So we're going to try and get through this. I know that, again, all of the teams have done really well. They've been working extremely hard. They're going to show you a little bit of what they did. And then after that, we've got just a sort of small little reception, some desserts and stuff in the room next door. And we'd love to, be a great chance for you to, if you want to talk to some of the teachers or, even myself, we'll be there to kind of wrap it up for today. Okay, so I think without any further delay, Emily, if you want to come on. So this is Emily, and in our admissions.
Hi there, everybody. Thanks. Nice to meet you. I don't often get a round of applause when I start talking to people. My name is Emily Kirby, and I'm the Director of Admissions here at DigiPen. And I just wanted to share a little bit with you about the admissions process. I know that most of you are looking at fall 2020 or 2021. It's a little bit down the line. So I don't want to get too into the weeds with the specific details of the application requirements, because those tend to shift a little bit from year to year. So before I begin, I would encourage you, in the year that you or your student are getting ready to apply, I would encourage you to look at the admissions page on our website. This is it right here. And that will give you the requirements for the year that you're looking at. There aren't major changes from year to year, but usually we do adjust a little bit just to keep our programs fresh and make sure that we're really asking the applicants for what we really need from them. For fall 2020, the application requirements are going to be updated on the website September 3rd. So early September, if you're looking at applying for fall 2020, you can check back and see the requirements for your program. We have 9 undergraduate programs here. We have 6 of them are Bachelor of Science degrees, 2 are Bachelor of Arts, and 1 is a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Of the Bachelor of Science degrees, 5 of the 6 are computer science related. 1 is computer engineering. And the computer science degrees range from graphics programming, that's our RTIS degree, computer science and digital audio, those students are building sound engines. We have just a traditional computer science degree. We have starting this fall, we're going to have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Machine Learning. That's a new degree for this year. Which is a really up-and-coming industry. It's an up-and-coming part of the industry. We want to make sure that our students are prepared for that if that's an interest they have. We have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Game Design as well, and then Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. For the Bachelor of Arts programs, we have Bachelor of Arts in Game Design and a Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design. The game design program is for students who really want to look at things like user experience, user interface, level design, world building. Those are students who are thinking about how to design a game so that it is fun to play. And for Bachelor of Arts in Music and Sound Design, that's for students who are musicians and want to be content creators for film or for games. And then finally, the Bachelor of Fine Arts in Digital Art Animation is it's an art and animation degree, like the title says. Those students are getting a fine arts foundation and then are moving into digital media as they go through and are preparing to create animations for games or film. So we operate on a rolling admissions basis, and we open the application the September prior to the year that you're coming in. So the fall 2020 application is going to open September 3rd, 2019. We usually start evaluating applications in October, and then we give decisions on a continuous basis throughout the year. We are going to have some priority deadlines this coming year on February 1st, April 1st, and July 1st. So again, that will be updated on the website in the early fall, and I would encourage you to check that. Although it's rolling admissions and we continue accepting applications throughout the year, the earlier the better in terms of having access to resources like scholarships and housing. So if you're thinking about applying for fall 2020, I would say go ahead and do it as early as September this year. You can start then, and then you'll start getting decisions in late October, early November. What else do I need to say about admissions? Rolling admissions, we evaluate applications holistically. So we, of course, require high school transcripts. We require SAT or ACT scores. There's an essay regardless of program. The arts programs have a portfolio that goes with them, but we kind of look at applicants, we look at them as a whole person, not just as a test score or a GPA. Of course, those are a factor, but they're not the only factor. What we're really interested in seeing is passion and fit for these programs. And so I'm really glad that you all are here having done pre-college, because you've already got a taste of whether this is the right thing for you. Any questions about admissions? Oh, one thing I forgot to say. Having been in pre-college, the tuition you paid here will apply toward your freshman tuition should you choose to enroll in the college. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, now, are there any questions about admissions? Yes?
How drastically do the requirements change?
Not drastically.
For the art one, it wouldn't be like, for now it's an interior space, it wouldn't change from an interior space to something different?
We do sometimes change, we may add prescribed drawings. So yes, that can happen. We would not have something as drastic as like getting rid of the portfolio. But for things like the portfolio requirements, what is in it may shift a little bit from year to year. Yep. Yes.
Could any assets from the games we make here go into a portfolio? Like for an art portfolio, could the art assets go in?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, the question was, can anything on the assets that you created here at pre-college, could you use that in your portfolio for application, for admission? Yes, you can do that. Other questions?
What other types of things should students be thinking about in their next couple of years before they go?
Thank you, Katie. Great question. What should students be thinking about as they're heading into their junior and senior years? Maintaining good grades, that's important. But also learning how to work on a team. As you've experienced here, the games industry is very team-based, and so is our curriculum at DigiPen. And so getting that team experience now will be helpful. We also encourage you to try out the thing that you think you're interested in. You're doing that here, which is fantastic. If you think you're into computer science, try to pick up some coding languages just to see if do you like coding. That's an important thing to know if you're going to be a computer scientist. If you want to be a game designer, you should be designing games and keeping a portfolio, writing down your ideas, and thinking about your process. Who's your audience? How do you make revisions? How do you decide what to get rid of and what to add in each iteration of your game? And for artists and musicians, just keep practicing. Get critique. That's a really important part of any creative process, and get used to getting critique, because critique is not failure. It's just revision. And I know that when you're super successful all the time in high school, like a lot of you probably are, being told that you need to change something might be a little bit of a shock the first time you experience it, but that's just really part of the process. It's part of any creative process, and getting used to that is good. Yep. Other questions? I'm going to hand the mic back to Ray. This is Katie. She's going to be tabling outside after this, so if you have more admissions questions, feel free to ask her and she'll be able to answer them. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Emily. Yeah, I completely echo what she just said, and I think what's really awesome today is that you don't have to wait to go to college to start learning this, right? There's so much resource available online. If you're, I would say that if you're leaning towards the fine arts side, then what you really want to do is you want to concentrate on developing foundational art skills. I mean, you guys, the artists here today, you see the importance of that, right? You don't have to wait for college. You don't have to, worry about, or you're not limited by the fact that maybe your high school doesn't have a very good foundational art training program. You can find sources outside of that, and if you really want to do this, you should begin right away. On the sciences side, get really fluent with mathematics, right? You want to be very comfortable with it, so that when you don't just go for the minimum. If you know that you want to do programming, you want to do engineering, understand that math is a very big part of that, and you don't there's not a limit to what you should focus on, and again, you're not limited by what's offered in the high schools. There's other material, there's Khan Academy, there's courses that you could take on Udemy, there's all the MOOCs that are available from the local, not local, but from many universities, free courses that you can go start learning about linear algebra, start learning about calculus, start learning about, how to calculate derivatives, and don't wait, right? Then when you come in here, you're not getting slapped in the face with something you've never seen before. At least you're familiar, and that'll ease your transition into this. So I think those, all the things that Emily and Katie mentioned and what I'm saying now, this is definitely what you want to do. Remember I said at the beginning, right? It's about discipline, humility, and ownership. This is the ownership piece. You want to be in this field, you want to do this, then own it. Go find the resources that are aplenty. They're all out there, and you can certainly dive into it without having to wait for an official professor or your high school teacher to present it for you. That's not a barrier, should never be a barrier for you today. You want to do something, go get it, right? Own it. So what I want to do now is introduce Kevin, and Kevin was helping to manage the two CE students with their project. So I'll have them come up here, and if you can just give him a round warm of applause, I'll let him describe to you some of the project work that his kids were doing.
Hi, so as Ray said, my name's Kevin. I've had the pleasure of working with the two CE students during the project lab portion of the pre-college course. So in this, we had them work with embedded systems and electronics in order to gain a better understanding of how to work with a lot of the systems that are present in lots of technology we have today. For them in particular, they were using the Arduino, which is a very common microcontroller that you can use for your own projects. And over the course of this course, they worked on learning how to control various kinds of electronic components, how to get their feet wet in being able to do some calculations on these, and then looking up stuff online, because a lot of the data for these electronic components are on data sheets online. So they would need to know how to find these components and use them in their own projects if they are to use them in the future. So for the first couple of weeks, they learned how to use the components, and then in the last couple of weeks, we had them work on a very intensive design process to create their own projects, which they'll be talking about right there. So a lot of material that they had to take in the 4 weeks, especially the design process, the iteration on their final projects, getting it within scope, and troubleshooting. A lot of it came down to troubleshooting and making sure that they knew what was going wrong, and if they couldn't fix it, at least they knew what they could fix later on, which is pretty important for getting your final project working. So without further ado, I'll have Dominic. Do you want to come up first? I'll have Dominic come up and present his project to you guys.
Hello, my name is Dominic Ogino, and today I'm going to be presenting my robot pet. All right. So the design process. The first thing I had to do was come up with an idea and try to see what sensors I could try. One of them I wanted to try was the photoresistor. Actually, be more precise, the ultrasonic sensor right here in the front of the robot. I wanted to see To understand how this robot will work in different applications with the ultrasonic sensor, and so I finalized with the ultrasonic sensor as my primary way to interact with the robot. An idea that I came up with was a couple other things, but I finalized with the robot pet, and the reason behind this is because though I have home and I have 2 other pets, I still feel kind of alone, So I decided to build this thing. So one of the things I had to get was the materials. One of the materials that was given to me was the Arduino, and the breadboard, and the breadboard. Those 2 things helped me out tremendously in building out the entire foundation of my robot. I was also given a battery to help to work with, and a couple other sensors, like a temperature sensor, a photoresistor, a potentiometer, and and 2 motors to help to try out different things. The parts that I ended up sourcing for was two treads to be able to make the robot be able to move around. The reason I kind of choose treads is because I have 2 animals back at home, and they tend to leave their toys out on the floor, so I had to find a way to be able to get over the toys themselves without my robot getting stuck, and the choice I made was treads themselves. The motors I also searched for came from the same company, so that means I know that the treads will work with the motors themselves and vice versa. Next up was the sensor. I ended up deciding to search out a photoresistor and also a monitor to be able to show motion, but as you can see, there's no monitor on here, was because I didn't have time to be able to finalize the coding. The photoresistor was very interesting to play with and very cool to understand with, and though I didn't have it initially, ended up using ultrasonic and infrared, actually, it did end up working out. So the problems that I faced, one problem I was definitely facing was the temperature sensor spiking up in heat as the motors were running. I'm not sure what was going on to cause that spike, but as I observed, it turns out the increase in voltage caused the temperature sensor to increase in and what the reading is standing for. So I end up having to get that one out because I'm not sure how to mitigate that system, even with a separate breadboard. Another problem that I faced was definitely that the code was a little bit jittery for the ultrasonic sensor. The reason, I'm not sure why the exact reasoning behind this, but as soon as I figured out how to get it more stable and also be able to tell the exact distance, the problem was definitely solved. Another problem that I definitely had faced in the beginning was the structural material. I ended up using Legos as my final structure. My initial plan was metal or wood as the materials. I found pros and cons to each one. Metal is pretty strong, very durable, and can be definitely found in many of our bots. But the downside is price. Wood is definitely a cheap option, but it requires skill and hard work. Same with metal. Lego was pretty easy to build, and I understand it well. The downside is that it doesn't have much structure due to plastic rigidity, but I end up choosing Legos because I'm very used to it, and I know how to make it stronger by structural support. So this is my robot, and thank you so much.
Next, we'll have Kevin come up here and present his project for CE.
Kevin Shi. For my project, I created a turret robot. So I also built it out of Mindstorm Lego parts. I first want to talk to you about how to control it. So instead of using traditional buttons, Instead of using traditional buttons, I use a library called Capacitive Touch, where it's able to sense the electricity flow from your body to let that kind of activate a button. So I have aluminum foil taped to wires. There's 4 of them. Each of them controlling would be the left and right of the turning of the base first motor. And these would control the up and down, which adjust this motor to let the robot able to aim at different heights. So these go into Arduino that communicates to the motor to let it turn. And one of the hardest challenge I face is by mixing the motor and the Arduino parts they do not come together. So finding a way to able to first like locate the motor, hold it in position, and let it able to work with the Mindstorm parts to let it actually build something. Another hard problem I face is just building the whole thing. As you can see, it's pretty complicated. Because I was given just a huge pile of different parts. They're really small, and trying to envision something big that work all together is pretty challenging. That's mostly what I have, and if you have any questions or you want to see this demonstrated, I'll be in the room.
Okay.
And yeah,
Down the hall.
down the hall.
Okay, great.
All right. All right, so I would like to call up Chris Onorati, who was the chief cat wrangler for the game projects. The game projects, of course, here at DigiPen are a big part of the educational experience. This is where we have all the students from the different disciplines, from the sound and music program to the engineering or to the computer science, the design, the art. And these different tribes have to have their members trying to figure out how they're going to work together to finish up a project. So, Chris, you want to go ahead and...
All right, first off, I'm just one of many, so if you're associated with the pre-college classes at all, I would like you to stand up right now, and I want you to give these guys a round of applause. They worked very hard the last 4 weeks. So the pre-college class, it's only 3 weeks, it's 4 weeks long, but they really get started the third week, so they make these games in 15 days, effectively, from scratch. It's super impressive. Never let your students tell you that they're not impressive, because sincerely they are. I work with the college students usually, but my God, I was blown away by them. It's totally a round of applause to them as well. This is a combination of art, of sound, of programming, of design. They're learning how to work on a team for the first time, all while, again, in a 15-day time frame. Again, very, very impressive work. I couldn't be more happy I've worked with all your students. And if any of them choose to come to DigiPen, I look forward to working with them again. Thank you. Yeah. So, Chronicles of Psy, first team, feel free to come up.
All right, so we're going to have each team come up and briefly present their project and tell you a little bit about it. So, who's speaking?
I'll take the mic.
All right, so, oh yeah, that's right, you guys can go up there.
Right, so, hi, we're Team Mythos, and our game is Chronicles of Psy. I'm the game director, Enrique Valiente.
I am the art lead. My name is Aiden Liu.
I'm the sound lead, Vale Kuntz.
I'm the tech lead, Zev Seitz.
I am the lead designer, William Borgen.
And our programmer and level designer, Chris Choi. Now, Chronicles of Psy is a side-scroller that is an homage to classic games such as Mega Man, Castlevania, and Contra. We went for this as we all seem to enjoy this platformer action. Now, in this game, you play as Basil, an archer selected by the gods to prevent all of them fallen champions from collapsing in each other. Now, in this game, you use a bow and a side, which you have to draw in order to fire. Now, when we first went about going we wanted a challenge, very ambitious, and we decided that we were going to screen our game. Now, granted, the increased challenge is difficult, such as in the case where we had an extra to face from losing a We even got these title screens and whatnot, and we also started kind of fine tuning. We incorporated some new mechanics with the bounce pad to allow the player to bounce freely up in the air. And right around beta, we came across these final steps.
That always comes up is when you have that many intricate moving parts. There were many initial bugs, but most of those we were able to get smoothed out with time, and now I'm pretty proud of how Basil looks and moves and feels.
Now, by the end, which was yesterday actually, as we had a serious crunch time, we overall felt proud of our product. And when we first went about this, we originally believed that hey, it was going to be difficult, but I'm pretty sure we make it. We undersold that difficulty, but we pulled through, and after many hours of grueling bugs, SVN errors, and many more, we came out with a product that we all are extremely proud of. And I personally believe I couldn't have had a better team to work with. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aiden Stout, and I am the game director for Gamer Games here. And our game is Deflector Defender.
I'm Chase B. I'm the tech lead.
I'm Alexandra Tsikowska. I'm both in art and game design.
I'm
I'm Annie Escobar. I'm the sound design lead.
And then we have Jake DeAndrea over there as our design lead. So this game is a wizard versus a dragon, and the thing about the wizard is that he has the ability to deflect certain attacks from the dragon, which results in the dragon taking damage and eventually killing him. But we planned ahead to a little more than we handled, so we had some bug issues, and overall looked pretty good, but we could have added a bit more. For alpha, we had to get most of the main mechanics of the game, like we had the projectiles, we had the dragon somewhat moving, and just making it without all the art basically. By beta, we eventually were able to get those sprites. ball to deflect back. It's pretty good, and also get this second stage animation where now there's 3 dragons rather than just 1. If the biggest problem that we had was really just time management, just for the fact that we planned a little poorly and couldn't get everything that we wanted overall. If we did this again, definitely work on the time management, getting it done, planning ahead, doing the best that we can, and yes.
And on the topic of the art direction, we stuck with mostly entirely pixel art, so we stuck with isometric theme. And one of the things with the art that the biggest I had was that I wasn't sure what was going to be able to be implemented or not, and I feel like I sort of managed my time better and optimized the assets better for the people. Because some things didn't make it in, and I sort of allocated my time elsewhere, plug it in.
And on the topic of sound design, for the background music, I don't really know if you can hear it, but it is kind of like, first I started making a boss battle theme, and I wanted to kind of reflect the kind of old-fashioned, like, retro style of the game. So for it to be sort of like reminiscent of boss battle music, but also so that it would have, like, some activeness to it, that it would make you feel like you want to play, something that would give the player energy. So I also worked on a lot of the deflection sounds and the sounds of the fireballs. That was probably what took the longest in the game development process for me.
Programming-wise, I think some things that went well were the attack patterns that we got, the parallax effect with the backgrounds, how they move at different speeds to create depth, and the different phases. Yeah. Some things we had challenges with were really implementing different things like dash attacks, stuff like that, and again, time management.
So that's Gamer Games here, Deflector Defender. Thank you.
You guys ready?
Hi, I am Dalton. I am the game designer.
I'm Prasam Gupta. I'm the tech lead.
I'm Delara. I'm the sound lead.
I'm Alec. I am the actual project lead.
I'm Melody, and I'm the art lead.
And this is our game, Hard Light.
Don't forget about Luke.
That's Luke. Are you?
Yeah, that's Luke over there.
So Hard Light is a cyberpunk top-down hack and slash, where you play as Light, a mercenary that was hired to take out a leader of a robot rebellion. As the game designer, one of the hardest parts was balancing the waves and making decent enemy designs. But because of that, I'm also very proud of how the enemy designs came out, with the gameplay being pretty unique because of it.
Well, when it comes to programming, one of the hardest parts I would say was the dash mechanism, which we had a problem with, not only because it was a bit harder to code, but also because we wanted to feel that it was useful in the game. At first, it was when we tried to play test it, not a lot of people would use the dash attack, and that kind of got us thinking that maybe we should make some changes so that people are actually inclined to use the dash attack, and that's why we added those turret robots.
So when it comes to the actual game music, speaking of which, can you actually turn up the volume for a second?
There we go.
A little bit more, please. Okay, so basically when it comes to the actual music, it was a little hard at first because, you know, I know I didn't want to do something conventional. I didn't want to go for like a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat thing that everybody's heard a million times. So I thought of popular action movies and like The Matrix and The Fifth Element, and the first songs that came to mind that I could combine together that would work really well were for one, Army of Me by Bjork because it's got a really cool bass line, and Panic Attack by Dream Theater because some of the transitions are really cool. I mean, if you guys listen to prog metal, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I decided that I wanted it to be like super cool, super savage because we've got a silent female protagonist who has to literally kill these robots. So I thought, okay, what would that look like? What would coolness be the embodiment of? What would be the embodiment of coolness? So I thought, really strong bass, really punchy bass line, super strong drum beat, couple guitar riffs, and because it's a cyberpunk game, of course you need synthesizer. And these guys right here gave me a lot of reference points, especially Melody and Alec. Now for the actual sound effects, they weren't that hard, although they did have to be revised multiple times. Particularly the sword slash and the dash mechanic. Everybody here was really on and off about those, honestly. And also, yes, I did voice act for this game.
All right, so as the project lead, I'd say that the biggest challenge for me especially was finding something to do while everybody else worked after we had all become very coordinated.
Basically, you just played Cataclysm all day.
Yes, that's actually very accurate, especially for the later stages. But, yeah, it did start with me typing up documents, so don't worry, I actually did stuff. And really, I'd say in the beginning, it was the game was actually a combination of ideas that Dalton and I had come up with. And the real challenge was at first getting everything coordinated, making sure that we knew who to field which questions to. I mean, in the beginning, Protham was asking me questions about about wave patterns, which really had to go to Dalton, since he's the design lead. But as you can see, we managed to pull through on this. And I must say, I'm pretty damn proud of the entire team.
So when it comes to the art, I wanted it to really emphasize how the background kind of makes it really feel like a cyberpunk game. And I really wanted to make it seem like it was at night, and at the same time, keep our character like in front of you and make sure you know where she is at all times. So I made her yellow and orange, just to contrast that a little bit. But yeah, I feel like the purple, blues, and the pinks really highlight the cyberpunk theme. And one of my biggest challenges was prioritizing what animations I had to get done first. Because I feel like in the end game, we could have had a lot more animations if I had just figured out what needed to be completed.
Before we end, there's one Easter egg we have put in the game, which Luke is a big part of. So, Luke, if you could just exit and show the debug mode.
And with special sounds made with extreme skill by Protham.
Oh, come on, he's not as skilled as I am. Let's be honest.
We present to you the debug mode.
But of course, they still kept playing music.
Yeah, so with that pop-up menu, you can change the move speed and the health of the player. Pew. I'm a robot and I'm dead.
Let me tell you, this gets me every time.
All right, that's it, right?
Speaking of which, anything to say about your album?
I'm fine.
Yeah, well, that is a hard light.
And next up, please welcome the team behind Monster Purge.
My life is just a long blooper reel.
Hello. So I am Pete Perry. I'm the director behind our game, which is called Monster Purge, which is essentially a single-screen arcade platformer, basically inspired by the original Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, but if you remember, even before that, the original one, which is not a scroller, but it is instead a set screen where you have to defeat every enemy on screen. And it's also inspired by the original Donkey Kong as well as Kirby. So, as you can see, you play as a wizard who can use.
You guys, yourselves first.
Oh yes, okay. So I'm Pete Perry. I'm the game director.
Hi, I'm Drew James. I was the technical lead.
I'm Taylor, and I was art lead number 1.
I'm Michelle. I was art lead number 2.
I'm Vale. I was the sound lead.
I am Eli, and I was the design lead.
You can't hear him, but our designer is over there playing the game.
So basically, you play as a wizard through 3 different levels, and you have to remove all the monsters on screen with a 2-stage attack. So part 1 of the attack is actually sucking up the enemy into the staff with a magical wind attack, and then part 2 of the attack is shooting that enemy out again as an energy ball. And so once all the enemies on the screen are defeated, you go to the next level, where it is a different locale with different enemies. And so then there's a 3rd level that is also a different locale. We'll probably get to that soon. And then after that, it loops back to the 1st level, similar to the original Donkey Kong. But there are more enemies added, and the enemies get faster. And so the game essentially is for score, and it could go on forever.
One of our biggest challenges from a technical standpoint was the attack. Since we had to have an attack that allowed you to do things with the same key press but were very different. So when you are holding the J button and you do not have an enemy absorbed, which is indicated by particle effects, you have to be stationary, you cannot move, and you can't be in the air. But you can release the orb to shoot it at an enemy at any time. So because of that, we had to do a lot of variable management to sort of get that attack going, as well as increasing difficulty while looping the game without making it unbeatably hard and punishingly difficult really quickly.
Yeah, a big challenge of the production of this game was because a lot of the base mechanics were so challenging to program, design challenge was trying to design and plan out the game without actually being able to test a lot of it initially, but it did turn out pretty well.
One of our challenges when it came to art was just kind of figuring out our workflow because, as you can see, we have 2 artists, and we decided to do it in a pixel art kind of style, which I don't believe either of us have had experience with before. So this was kind of a new thing. And personally, I really didn't like using the suggested kind of program to draw pixel art in because I wasn't used to it, and it's kind of limited in terms of tools. So we figured out how to kind of incorporate many different art programs like Piskel, which was the initial suggested program to use to make pixel art, but then we also use Clip Studio Paint and Procreate. And so we found a way to, having 2 artists was actually kind of a good thing because Taylor, he started out kind of doing animation. Do you want to explain that?
So I worked on the animations of the game, where the character idle, the character attack, and you did the sucking animation, and then all of the different enemies. It was kind of like an assembly line. I did the character design and animation, and Michelle shaded all of them.
Yeah,
And
so
so,
because
the
you would
background.
do all of the things in like flat colors, right? And then you
Mhm.
pass it on to me,
Yeah.
and then I would go on my own preferred program, and I would kind of like render everything. I also did the backgrounds as well, and then I would kind of put it back into Piskel to export it in the right size because the program I was using did not like, it didn't like pixel art. So it was kind of a convoluted like a workflow. However, I am glad that we got to incorporate the program that I was used to using because it made it so that I think we got better results, and it did end up like just being a little bit faster because I kept getting frustrated with Piskel. And so, that kind of like conveyor belt kind of like process really just, I think it worked out personally.
Yeah, it worked really well.
So for sound design, this game was interesting because it had sort of a magic feel. And initially when they told me they wanted a sucking sound after describing their game, I was like, oh, that's like a vacuum. So I gave them a vacuum sound, and they're like, maybe not a vacuum, how about like a magic wand? And I hadn't seen the art yet, so I was like, what? And then I saw the art, and then I was like, okay, that makes a little more sense. So it was kind of fun trying to get the sounds right and match the characters, especially with the magic wand, like sucking up the characters and stuff. And yeah, and then the music was interesting too, because the music style had to kind of fit more of like a kind of a spooky themed game, I guess, which is a little more uncommon when it comes to games, like, and especially in terms of music, because instead of typical like just music you'd hear and be like, oh, that's video game music, it has to be that, but like with a little more undertones of like darkness and being spooky while still being lighthearted and fun to make sure the gameplay is nice and yeah, it's fun, I guess.
So yeah, that is our game, Monster Purge.
And next up, please welcome the team behind Prison Break.
All right. Hello, my name is Sean Williams. I am the game director behind Ono Prison Break.
My name is Annabelle Sutton. I was the art lead.
My name's Delara, and I was the sound lead.
I'm Trent Sutton. I'm the game designer.
I'm Alric Wheeler. I'm another game designer.
And that is Alexander Weiss. He is the tech lead. So basically, Ono Prison Break is a cops and robbers themed tower defense game. If you don't know what a tower defense game is, we'll demonstrate it in a bit. But the gist of our game is you play as Earl, a prison guard, and his prison has a bit of a problem. Prisoners are always escaping. So
It's basically Arkham Asylum.
yeah, except a lot more lighthearted and, not as many bad guys, that have weird themes to them. So basically, you can stop these prisoners from escaping by whacking them with Earl's baton or by placing down a cannon that shoots out a cop out of it, who will then arrest said prisoner that it got shot out at. So, if you would start the game. You can move Earl around by pressing W, A, S, and D. And you can you can swing his baton by pressing the space bar. So prisoners come in waves, basically. The first wave will be very easy. Only one prisoner will come out, but the wave will get harder the higher the wave goes. So like round 2 will be like 4 prisoners. Round 3 will be like a lot more. It increases exponentially. And as you can see, he gains money by defeating prisoners. Now, if you were to click on one of those dirt tiles, he can place a cannon for $200. However, you have to be careful with your spending, as if a prisoner escapes, you'll lose $50. If the round ends and you're in the negative monies, or if you're like in debt, you'll lose the game. So you gotta be careful with your money. And that's the main functionality of our game. As you can see, he's in debt, and game over.
So for this project, the main thing that I focused on was like just mainly designing the menu screen and the game over screen and
Oh, of
the
course, you
layout
had so much fun with both of those.
I did. It was very frustrating, but in the end, I pulled through that. But I also had the layout set up, or I set up the layout of the game itself with the path that the prisoners take and to get from the prison to the exit. And I also helped with some of the code for the turret shooting part and the spawning of the prisoners coming actually out of the prison. And I did have some help with that through Alex, and he will explain his part in helping me with that.
So, once we got like what we had to do, Chun definitely started off with a lot of things, and then I was mostly the tech lead, so I was the one to like implement them all into the game, mostly everyone's ideas into the scene, and then my own things like pathfinding, which we didn't end up implementing because like it made the game too hard to play, even though it did take a while and it was a challenge.
Do you want to talk about like level design?
Level design was a bit complicated. We started out with like maybe a dozen or so ideas, and we had to sift through each one of them until we found the perfect blend of using all the space in the level and while still giving the player enough freedom with enough challenge to the point where the prisoners aren't just escaping the prison immediately and they aren't running around the whole place. And then anyways, it was just hard to balance, really.
So as the art lead, I designed the levels and the characters and the animations for the game. In the beginning of our game, we spent a lot of time discussing whether we wanted to go for a more serious tone, something that you typically expect from a cop and robber situation, or if we wanted to go with something more comedic. And as you can clearly tell, we took the route of going completely comedic with all of it. We're shooting the cops out of the cannons.
There's actually a little, before I go into my piece, there's actually a little story behind that. So basically, these guys wanted to have a gun shoot prisoners out of the tower, but apparently that's not very monetizable, or so they say. So I told them about the history of the Comics Code Authority and how artists found creative ways to get around the censors during that time, such as showing them the cover for Jimmy Olsen, such as showing them the covers for Superman's Pal, but I couldn't find the cover I was thinking of. But they got my point anyways, and they just decided to do something really, really, really hilarious because all of their jokes on the team were like 90% memes and like 10% actually doing stuff until the very end.
Yeah, and just like
I didn't mean that.
No, it's fine. Sorry. It's fine. Just like as my final comments about the art, I spent some time thinking about Earl's design as well because I wanted him to kind of like fill up as much of his square as possible on the grid and like really stand out from the prisoners in like using simple shapes because he's very small on the screen. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm very happy with the character. I'm happy with the game art, and you can also go talk about the music.
So basically, can we turn up the volume, please? So basically, for this part, I decided to have a surf rock theme for the wave of enemies. And so, because they were gonna go all comedy route, I just decided, screw it, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And then I just decided with something very, very animated, because it was one of the first music ideas I had. And sound effects were a little weird because again, people were struggling quite a bit with the code, so I had to compensate a little bit. So I'd often make things before they were ready to get them. The best example I can give is the menu music, which had somewhat of a gypsy jazz feeling, and I made that before they actually got the menu. That being said, by the time they caught on to me, I had to do other sound effects as well, and it was kind of like a back and forth of like having way too much to do and then having nothing to do, and then having a little bit to do again. So it was kind of an interesting workflow. But you know.
Anyways, I think we've all said what we wanted to say. We'll wrap up this presentation with what we learned and what, if we were given the chance, what we'd do different next time. So I, for one, learned that game development is unpredictable. There are certain things that seem like they won't take too much time, but they do. Like, you could sit down and say, all right, this one bug fix will only take 45 minutes. 2 days later, you're still working on it. So you gotta expect the unexpected when it comes to game development.
Okay, well, one thing that I learned about, definitely tower defense game, I didn't really think about it too much when I made an idea, but really code heavy. So the first couple weeks, basically, the first couple weeks out of the 3 weeks were like not much progress because I had to actually get that code set up to be able to start making the levels and tuning the tower's cost, how much the prisoners take damage, which ended up being 1. But really, like, something I would do differently is like put the scope a bit down with this. Like, it did end up being good, but having like pathfinding, I worked a lot on that. We didn't end up doing it because of the scope. Like, knowing what I need to do and putting it in like when I need to do it, mostly, not something that was waiting. Have a lot of people waiting on.
For me, as the artist, I learned a lot about like how the art is incorporated into the game. Unlike a lot of the other artists on different game groups, I ended up implementing the animations in the game myself, which gave me more control over like how they looked and how I was able to implement them in the game. And I think that was a good experience to learn. One thing that I would change about what I did is my workflow and my pacing of my animation, because I ended up having to cram many of the animations within the past week because I hadn't planned planned out my timing of them well.
With me, I wish that I, for one, could have play tested the game more often to see what sound effects needed to be added, because I was just going off of what they were saying for the whole time, and then by the time I had to create new sound effects for things I didn't even know they were there, I was like, what? And then I was like, oh, that's what it looks like. And then I had to do that. So next time, if I'm going to do something like this, I'll make sure to play test the game more often. Another thing I'll make sure to do is get beta listeners, so people that listen to a song after it has been mixed down, recorded, mixed down, all of that stuff. Because I should make sure to get more feedback, because now looking back on it, the guitars in that surf rock song were MIDI guitars, and MIDI guitars really don't sound the best. So I wish I could have gotten beta listeners earlier so I could look for those sorts of things.
Alright, well, I guess something that I learned through this whole process was that it takes a lot of teamwork, and that's a very important factor in all of this. And I'd say like one thing that I would probably want to like still implement, or something that I probably wish we got to, was just to see if we could like add more unique ways to like maybe like have different types of towers, and like probably implement some different new effects to make the game more interactive and interesting. But overall, it was a pretty fun process, and I would suggest it for anyone who wanted to try and do this, something like this.
All right. Thank you. front of this.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, and then you can go over there.
Yeah. All right. Hi, my name is Scott Christensen, and I am the game director of Trudy Studios.
All right, and I am Jeff Chen. I am the lead designer of the whole project.
My name is Maddie Jeter, and I am the art lead.
My name is Luke Tarnowski. I was the tech lead for this project.
And then over there is Frank Barktus, and he was our sound lead on this. So our project, well, when we got together, we had no idea what we wanted to do. We started out thinking about potion shops. What do we go to after potion shops? It was a lot of different things. At some point, we were thinking about doing an arena fighter, but you love everyone to death. And then that eventually evolved, or depending on your view, devolved into the game, technically speaking, that is Quam Attack. Quam was just kind of something we came up with that stands for Questionably Adorable Monsters, which you will see after our little story insert. We also took inspiration from the original Mario Brothers, but we more looked at we kind of wanted an interesting take on it, where instead of protecting yourself, you're trying to protect your friends. One thing that we kept from our idea of the arena game was fighting with love, and also having very glitchy pathfinding. But I think that I'll go ahead and hand it off to Jeff to talk more about the design and the design process.
So when it comes to the game's initial design process, we, first of all, for the overall playstyle, we were definitely going for a fusion of both the original Mario Brothers and for games like Balloon Fight and Joust. Whereas we would attack the enemies themselves very often. But then what caught our mind the most is the whole platform, as the player's whole attack and moving pattern revolves around them. Like first, for the beginning, our platforms were like just there. They're like a solid brick in which you can't jump through them, you can't free fall through them, which limits the movements and the strategy of the whole game a lot. So we got a one-way platform in which you can jump through and you can fall down from it whenever you want. That's the first step. That's the first important part of the process, and it makes the whole platform formation more freely. Unlike in the Mario Brothers, it's just that. And then as the designer, I'm also responsible for cooperating with people who are better at coding than me to tweak with the, for example, walking speed, for example, the jumping height, and second, the attack hitbox and how long the attack lasts. And thanks to our brilliant programmer and game director, we actually came up with an idea. What if when the enemy is bursting with like love, it infects the other enemies? As you've seen before, there's like a combo chain activity thing going on, so I'm pretty proud of what happened to our entire thing here. And the most important part of the game, aside from the whole gameplay, is definitely the art, and I will lead that to our art lead, Maddie Jeter.
Hello. So for art, it was interesting because like when we first were scoping out ideas, it was so many different genres, like arena, the potion shop, like diner dash kind of thing, and then it turned into this, and I'm like, well, what do I do for that? And so I made a bunch of concept designs, but luckily my team took it really well, so I actually went with one of my first designs, which I was thought like kind of like a woodland, like kind of cozy but kind of mysterious as well, because I thought our mascot of the game are the Quams, the questionably adorable monsters. So I kind of wanted to revolve the theme and the overall style and emotion of the game around those characters. And you're trying to protect your friends, right? So I wanted to make you feel for the friends and like have a reason to want to protect them. So I kind of let that evolve into like a cuter art style. And yeah, it was definitely
workflow was interesting because I often found myself, I was either very ahead of my group or very behind my group. There was no in between. And, and here's our boss who is coming now. And I wanted some closure for the game too, so I created a boss. And I really liked the teamwork of our team because I never felt like I was coming up with all the art ideas, but it also didn't feel like I was just like pumping out art for their game, you know? So I really liked the interactivity and communication of our team. So yeah, it was just really fun. And yeah, the most important part of art is to make sure that it looks good and it looks in the game right. And with that, I will pass it off to our tech lead.
Yeah. All right. So the tech for this game wasn't too challenging, but it definitely had some hurdles. So definitely the first hurdle was getting our wave system to go. And when we were creating this wave system, we wanted it really customizable. Like you can make whatever you wanted. Like have our game designer just have fun, just go at it. So I definitely had some trouble with it at the start, and Scott had a really good idea, and I discovered some new code stuff that certainly helped me on my journey of that. And one part I definitely liked is the infection mechanic, also another one of Scott's ideas. It was really easy to code, but it really made the game satisfying to play. It added a huge satisfaction element to it.
And it made it mathematically possible to win.
Yes, that too.
That helps. That is very helpful.
Yeah. And I don't have too much more to add on to that.
Right. Do you want to do the old switcheroo or Frank top over there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Now we'll have our sound lead. Frank.
Oh. Wow, Luke.
Come on, Luke.
Come on. You said you were good at the game.
Yeah.
You programmed it. Why didn't you input the cheat codes? Come on.
We don't have a Konami code, man.
Okay.
All right.
Frank, would you like to?
Frank.
Okay, so
Frank.
So I did the.
Step up a little further.
Feel free to step further.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I did the music for the game, which uses mostly piano as a motif, which it's a bit simple. It's very atmospheric and fits the theme for the general tone for the game.
Nice.
Yeah, and kind of building off of that.
Luke.
Yeah, come on, Luke. Jeez. Boo! Boo! But kind of building off, if you listen, you can kind of hear sometimes when the enemies spawn, they have that really weird
noise.
Yes, attractive noise is one way to put it. We had we didn't have our sound effects actually. Oh, come on, Luke, you're better than this. Programmers these days. We didn't get our sound effects until later, and the sound was kind of separated from the team. So that initially it wasn't what we were thinking, but after seeing it, it really worked better than we really hoped. But I think that on that note, let's get Frank away from, or not Frank, let's get Luke. Yeah, let's get Luke away from this because obviously he's terrible. And
Luke.
No,
Let's just talk about.
No,
Okay,
we're good.
so let's do a quick talk about one thing we learned and one thing we would change if we were to be given this opportunity again, and I'm too far behind.
Yeah, so,
Jeff, would you like to start?
Me?
Jeff,
Fine.
you're on the
Okay.
side.
So for the entire thing, one thing I have learned that is, although everyone may seem different in what they excel at, but when we're together, we usually compensate each other. For example, I'm totally garbage tier at coding, but thanks to our game director and game programmer, I get to learn a bit of something about coding. I still get to assist them and exchange some ideas, which makes me feel less guilty about myself, of course. And if one thing we could improve is definitely to, well, I would say is, for me, that is, I will spend more time, actually practicing on Unity programming stuff, for example, C# and animation tutorials at my home in my own computer more often, because what I've done before was just spending most of my time inside the whole project, while outside of project, I'm just there to be there.
I definitely have a newfound respect for programmers. I definitely respected before, but I can imagine when your enemies continuously bunch up in one corner and refuse to die, and you have 15 angry people yelling at you because you promised you would have it all done last Thursday. That is stressful, and so So to all programmers out there, thank you for your service. And next time, I would definitely try and make sure that a lot of the times we had one person who was kind of not doing much because we had a limited number of computers. Eventually, we did manage to get more, and we were all working at the same time, but by then we were starting to consolidate everything down. So I would just try and get everything, more professional, I guess. Yeah. Right.
Cool. Jeter. The one thing that I'd say I learned the most about just this experience in particular is, like, usually when I draw, I either draw for myself or I don't usually make art for, like, the purpose of putting it into a project. So it was very interesting. When I went into it, I was like, okay, I'm just going to throw art into the void, and they'll take it and make it a game, and it'll be fine. But learning, like, the process and my involvement with their side and their involvement with my side, and, like, respecting their, like, what they excel in, and them respecting, like, what I think is correct, and getting that happy blend of knowing what we're doing and also being creative was really nice. So that's probably the biggest thing I learned, was just the environment and the workflow. If I could change something, I would
not keep me up till midnight.
Not keep my game leader up till midnight to make my pumping out drawings. And yeah, getting that work, like knowing what to work on. I think this has been said a lot, but knowing what to work on when and what's most important, because when you have all of these assets in front of you, it's really hard to decide what to focus on, what will even get into the game. So you end up tossing and turning, and then you have to have it done. So you're like, well, okay. And so yeah, though our communication was good, but it was hard. It was hard sometimes.
I learned how to make music in a different way and more efficiently, but one thing I would change would be, I feel like I should have helped my programmers more, because I'm also pretty experienced with programming, and like they kind of needed it sometimes.
Hey!
It's all right, buddy. It's all right, buddy.
You need help programming. You need help playing the game.
Yeah, I keep the team together. I'm the glue.
You are.
Yeah, you and me are the
great.
two.
I'm sorry, who's the one who brought cookies?
Okay.
Who was the one who brought cookies?
Yeah. Anyway, so something I learned is definitely leaning on your teammates for creative solutions to problems you have really helped me a lot. So I think I'll be doing that more in the future. And something I would change is definitely my workflow in like the last week. It wasn't as productive as it could be. Like during the polish stages, I just didn't know exactly what to do, so I was just kind of floundering around. So definitely focus on that in the future.
Plus, me and him, we spent most of the time singing the sea shanties to boost the morale. It really worked.
There was a lot of singing involved.
I now know exactly what to do with a drunken sailor.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think with that, thank you all so much for coming and listening to us and bearing with his gameplay.
Thank you.
So much.
And our very last team, please welcome Samurai Jacob.
I'm Isaiah Cheo, and I'm the game director for Samurai Jacob from Team Salt.
I'm
Team Salt.
Isabel Warren. I did the art direction.
I'm Ahmed. I am the game design lead.
I'm Anna Etskola. I'm the sound design lead.
And I'm Gabriel Curtis, the tech lead.
I'm Quet Everett. At the end of the weeks, I just did animation.
And that's the other Isaiah over there, confidently playing our game. Root for him.
He's also the other programmer, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for Samurai Jacob, what I thought and what we thought when we were making the game was a more Japanese themed, more like Mega Man, but more fast paced. So you're shooting a ton of projectiles at once, and you have a bunch of enemies that you're fighting. And I think it went pretty well. For the animations were pretty challenging to get done, and I think Quaid did a great job with them.
Yeah, at the end of the time, it was pretty hard to get the animations to work with not having a weird interruption flow or just not bugging out when you have two of them at the same time. And I think I fixed it pretty well. It might still have a few errors, but I think it's overall pretty good for flow-wise.
Yeah, so for the art, there were a couple big challenges. Like for the backgrounds, the game likes to render it and cut off parts of it. So about yesterday, I had to resize all of our backgrounds to make sure that they weren't cut off super awkwardly. And the animations were, especially with Quaid and I, went back and forth to make sure that the animations looked good, because our character, Jacob, used to shuffle back and forth when he attacked, and we realized...
Yeah, it was a little weird to solve.
Well, you said you were good at this game.
Yeah, come on, man. So it looked really weird, and it was a lot of part on my end fixing how the feet lined up, and then on his end making sure that it didn't bug out every 5 seconds.
Change the center point for the pictures. It was a little...
Yeah, it was a struggle, but it worked out in the end.
So for the sound, if you would bring up the volume a little bit. So for the music, I kind of worked on just like a traditional Japanese style music, but more electronic and more modern. So that is what it is. And then I also worked a lot of the sound effects, like the sword slashing and the different death sounds of the yokai enemies. So that is what I worked on mainly for this project.
Yeah.
For the UI, it was mainly just about adding text and positioning where it was to make everything look nice on the screen, so it fit and everything looked, polished. With the making 4 scenes with the main menu, exit, and the controls and the windscreen. It really was mainly just, going on pretty much redoing a lot of the same stuff, but it was pretty easy. I thought it was pretty good, and it came out all right. It wasn't perfect. I would have liked to have done better, but I mean, I only had so much time.
All right, Zaya, come out here. Tell us what you've done. You need to be proud of it, man. You did good.
Yeah. So I mainly worked on the scoreboard and combo scripts, which is it doesn't look like much, but it's kind of a pain when you get down to it, and after a whole bunch of reworks and stuff, I mean, I think it ended up pretty good. So you got the little UI elements at the top of the screen telling you what your score is, and then the local high score for the computer, and then little bits of other information.
And in tackling the designs for the enemies, so at the start, we were going to call the game Samurai Jack, but then copyright issues. So we went with Jacob, and so the style obviously is more pixel art, and the program Piskel we were working with had a lot of limitations. So working in a 64 by 64, I had to cut out a lot of detail I would have liked to have, especially since we were trying to go for more of an anime-esque feel, but because of the lack of being able to fit all that detail, we couldn't exactly get that in. So we pushed the Japanese field to where Samurai Jacob is protecting his village from demon yokais. There's a sandal yokai and there's a scroll yokai, which are actual Japanese yokais that I designed to fit into our game.
That's our game, and things I learned. For me, I feel like the biggest thing that I learned was don't be afraid to ask for help. Never. Never, ever, ever. We had the instructors over helping us, I think, around the clock, almost all the time. I think when they weren't there, we asked them to come back. I'm sure they're fed up with us.
Yeah,
but
probably all hate us now.
yeah, they probably don't just want us to come back. No. But yeah, I was so grateful for all the help, and it was really helpful for them. Isaiah?
Oh, yeah. Well, I learned that when you're writing code with other people, you definitely have to talk to them, or else it gets very bad very quick.
Lots of string.
Yeah.
Mainly with the UI and helping bug fixes and stuff like that. It's just, asking for help a lot, not really knowing what I was doing half the time, kind of sucked. So asking for help helped out, yeah.
Yeah, asking for help is really helpful.
Yeah. What I learned is that you can't always rely on your software that ports out your game, because we encountered a lot of troubles with our SVN that got our games between. We had to, destroy it a couple times, bring it back because it kept destroying our game, and eventually we worked that out. But I learned that screaming doesn't help in that situation. It stresses everybody else out.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Oh, I can talk now?
Yeah, you're allowed to talk. You can talk about some other things if you want.
Okay.
I wasn't stopping you.
Like they said, SVN, real pain in the ass. Not fun. Also not fun. Trying to like implement like other builds to like other computers. But yeah, I learned asking for help, super important. People know a lot of people know a lot more than you. Please take their advice.
Yeah. And I learned, I guess, that you have to double check everything and make sure everything works properly, make sure that everything in the game sounds the way it's supposed to, and make sure that everything loops correctly, check everything before it gets sent off, and then check it again when it's in the game, and just basically check everything as much as possible.
All right, Quake, come here. Tell us what you learned.
I learned that it's not fun doing animation at all, and then you're gonna need help, and you need to learn how to do it quickly, especially with our time constraints. So you had to either get help quickly, or figure out how to do it yourself through watching YouTube videos, or just helping, and then working with other groups, even amongst the teams, was a great help, because you could learn what they already knew, but learn it quicker from not having to search it up, find it yourself, and then learn from the video.
All right, that's our game. Thank you.
Hello. So what do you guys think? That's all the teams. But a big round of applause for the students. Again, I don't know what you think. Hopefully you are impressed. This is really about 2 weeks worth of work for them to pull this off. I mean, we have to start at the beginning, getting them up to speed on the different tools and all that kind of stuff. So for them to execute the projects that you've seen this afternoon, it's not trivial. It is absolutely not trivial. And all of you guys, great job. Congratulations on pulling off a really great project. So I do want to, Chris kind of beat me to it a little bit, but I do want to thank the faculty that were involved. I don't know, where are you guys that were involved with all of the pre-college? So Jeremy, where are you? Jeremy, I see you. Come on, stand up, guys. There's Wing. And these are not all of them. I mean, there's a lot of faculty members who are not here right now. For all of us, the big thing is that we want to use this opportunity to help people become informed about what's involved. And this pre-college program could absolutely not be done without the faculty taking the time. We've got some faculty here that are basically adjuncts. They've joined us. They're taking time out of their busy schedule to work with the kids. Of course, we have the full-time faculty. We have some faculty involved with the K-12. I mean, this pre-college program it's really a company-wide initiative. I haven't even mentioned the people in IT, and then we've got all the other supportive. You can see the live streaming and everything that's going on. It is a company-wide thing, and I think what you guys have seen is that any kind of project that you're doing is not just going to be a solo effort. Right? It's going to take a lot of different people, and you got to be able to work with them. You're going to have to argue with them. You're going to have to advocate for your side. You're going to have to be a little empathetic to their side and understand what's going on. I mean, this goes beyond DigiPen, and I hope that's a lesson that you guys really take with you as you leave here. So just a couple more things. First of all, for the students, we'd love for you to leave here with a little souvenir. So before you go, make sure you stop at the store. You can pick a T-shirt if you like, if you a hat. Find something that will be a good souvenir for yourself from DigiPen, and just give them your name, and they will mark you down. So make sure you do stop. I think they've got some sweatshirts there, some jackets, so something that will help remind you of your experience this last 4 weeks with us. And then, of course, for the rest of you, again, my sincere thanks for you entrusting us with your student for the last 4 weeks. We recognize that when we talk about 4 weeks of the summer, this is a very big investment on the student's part, but also on your part, financially, time-wise. Maybe it disrupted your summer vacation plans. For that, we are very, very thankful and really appreciate, again, you giving us a chance to work with them. We do have some refreshments in the next room, and I invite you to just come on over and grab something before you leave. And I hope that all of you enjoy the rest of your summer. Thank you again, and we'll see you next hour.